All right, so we'll start with competition. This is the type of symbiosis where both species are negatively affected by the presence of the other. So in this case, we have rabbits and deer competing for the same food resource, which is the grass. So when the rabbits are present, they're eating the grass. That makes it there's less grass available for the deer, and same vice versa. The deer are eating the grass. If the deer eat it, then the rabbits can't have it. So get rid of the rabbits, the deer would do better, and same thing the other way around. There are lots of types of competition, lots of ways to classify competition. And our first classification is going to look at interspecific and intraspecific competition. In interspecific competition, we're going to have individuals of two different species competing for the same resource. So in this picture that I have, we have a cardinal and a blue bird. The bird is blue. I don't know my birds very well, but they're fighting over the same food resource. Okay, they're two different species, so we can kind of remember interspecific because these are between species. If you want to get to California, you're going to get on the interstate and drive from Arizona to California between states. Okay, competition between species, interspecific. We can contrast that with intraspecific, is where we're going to have individuals of the same species competing for the same resource, like these seagulls that are fighting over the scrap of bread or whatever they have. And typically what we see is that intraspecific competition is stronger, meaning that their negative effects are greater, right? There's a bigger deficit when we are competing with each other than when we have interspecific competition. So I want you to come up with an explanation for that. I'm not going to tell you the answer now, but I want you to think about it. Why do we see stronger competition between species or between members of the same species than members of different species? As we saw in the evolution chapter, that intraspecific competition, but the competition between members of the same species, can lead to speciation. The study that we're going to look at here is talking about interspecific competition that's going to cause, spoilers, one of these species to go locally extinct or to be excluded from a particular area. In this case, it happens to be a test tube. So if two species share the same ecological niche, or they have the same ecological role or job in an ecosystem, and that's going to include all of the biotic and abiotic factors. If that's true, then they cannot coexist in the same place at the same time. One of them is going to win and one of them is going to lose. In a famous experiment by ecologist Gregory Gauss, he grew paramecium, these little single-cell protists, 3 different species. They were grown separately, and then he grew them together in the same test tube. So let's look at these paramecium populations when they're growing alone. And I'm just going to call them the red species, the blue species, and the purple species. And so our red species has a carrying capacity just shy of 200 individuals per milliliter of the culture water that these guys were growing in. Our blue species, just about 125 individuals, and then our purple species, they were coming in just under 150 for their carrying capacity. Okay. Now, when Gauss grew these 2 species together in the same flask, we can see that the purple carrying capacity when grown with the blue species dropped from about 150 down to about, 75. Okay. The blue species also saw a lowered carrying capacity from about 125 to maybe about 20. Okay, so both species were negatively affected by the presence of the other. We cannot maintain the same higher population levels, but they can coexist And this means that they're using slightly different resources in that environment. When the purple species and the red species are grown together, the red species reaches a carrying capacity of about 150 individuals per milliliter, so which is lower than what it was when they were grown alone. But look what happens to the population level of the purple species. They die off. They go locally extinct when the red species and the purple species are growing together. So this experiment and other similar experiments led Gauss to define the competitive exclusion principle, where it says that two species with the exact same requirements or that ecological niche cannot live together in the same place using the same resources. If they have that same niche, one of them is going to exclude the other by being better competitors. So sorry, purple guys, you are out, and red is the winner. Now, when we talk about intra-specific competition, the individuals that are the poorer competitors are usually forced to use a slightly different resource. And we call this niche partitioning. And it's going to lead to that sympatric speciation that we discussed in our evolution chapter. Okay, so these warblers don't want to compete with each other. So the losers are going to go use a slightly different resource, undergo different evolutionary pressures, and then eventually become reproductively isolated. So now, boom, bless you, my son, we have new species.